What's going on, guys? This is Rob, and welcome back to the Rumor Roundup, our weekly series where we run over all the news and rumors that you may have missed over the course of the week. We're largely sticking to Marvel comic book movies this week, but for all of you guys who are huge Hugh Jackman fans and want to see him in the MCU, do we have some news for you? But before we get into that, Tom Hardy has been actively campaigning to get Tom Holland into the Venom movies, or to do a movie with Venom in a Tom Holland Spider-Man movie. One way or the other, he's been campaigning to work with Tom Holland, and this is cool. This is something that we're seeing more and more often in comic book films. Have you guys noticed that? That you usually have these kind of like separate universes, and that you had like Tom Holland who didn't want to go back to just this Sony verse. He wanted to stay in the MCU, so he literally called up Disney's president drunk. Do you guys remember that? It was like the big to-do when it came out, but he literally called him up drunk, just like going on a rant about how he didn't want to stay at Sony. He wanted to stay in the MCU, and apparently it worked. It's what led to the big deal between Sony and Disney in the first place. But now you've got Tom Hardy who wants to have a movie with Tom Holland, and that's cool. I really like the idea that actors and actresses are having a pretty big say in how things progress with regards to the Marvel Cinematic Universe versus the Sony landscape. I do believe it is kind of making things a little complicated. How much I wish that things could just be simple, so we could go to see Marvel movies and we could see Tom Holland Spider-Man and not have to worry that he won't be in the MCU in 3 years. That he'll basically be in there forever. But such is the deal. Sony currently owns the film rights for Spider-Man. But on the same topic of Venom, a lot of you guys may have also heard, Venom has been delayed yet again. It's been delayed only by 3 weeks, but apparently this is due to rises in the Delta variant of COVID. Now, this is also kind of a dangerous thing here. The reason being because if the movie was postponed due to the rise in Delta variant cases, there doesn't really seem to be any indication those cases are gonna go down. And so it seems like either they're gonna stay even or they're gonna go up, which means the movie could be delayed yet again. Now, to be honest, it makes sense that they're doing this. And the reason why is because Sony doesn't really seem to be doing what Disney's doing, which is releasing movies on Disney Plus and in the movie theaters at the same time. Sony largely seems to be sticking to the tried and true formula of releasing the movies in theaters, and then once they have their theatrical run, then releasing them on streaming services, whatever those services happen to be. I'm not 100% sure if Sony has its own streaming service. I'm not gonna swear to that, and honestly, I'm too lazy to look it up. Actually, you know what? That's not an accurate statement. I don't care enough to look it up. But regardless, Sony's releasing the movie in theaters, and so if you want to maximize the amount of money you can make in theaters, because this really seems to be their one shot to recoup the money that was spent making the film and then make a little more money on top, you want to keep it in theaters, so they're going to keep postponing it, hopefully not too long, otherwise interest will just die down. That's one of those things you really have to contend with. If you keep postponing a movie long enough, it just won't perform well in the box office because people will just stop caring. And as much as I love the first Venom movie and as excited as I am for Venom 2, with everything coming out next year, it's gonna be a hard sell to get people to care about a movie that's been postponed multiple times in the face of everything else that's coming out as well. But continuing our discussion here on comic book movies, did you guys see that in the newest little TV spot, I guess, this little 1 minute long teaser for Shang Chi and Legend of the Ten Rings, that we finally got a much better look at Abomination when it's not an all grainy, pixelated image that's on like every single website and everybody's using Photoshop adjustments to try to make it look better. We got a much cleaner image of Abomination. And honestly, he looks kind of different from what he originally looked like when we saw him in the first Incredible Hulk film. He looks more like his comic book counterpart now, and I'm digging that. The funny thing about this, and the question that a lot of people probably end up asking here is, why does he look different? In all honesty, I don't really think Marvel needs to provide an answer for that, right? In the same way that the Incredible Hulk, as it's played or as it's portrayed by Mark Ruffalo in the MCU, does not look the same as the Incredible Hulk that we saw in the Edward Norton film. And people are just kind of like, whatever, it's the Incredible Hulk, and they just kind of shrug their shoulders and call it a day. That you can do the same thing with Abomination. If they really, really want to do an in-movie explanation, they could say that he's kind of evolved in terms of his physical form, right? That when he first became Abomination, it's like when you're born into the world, and over time your body changes, and then you become essentially the person you're going to look like more or less for the rest of your life. It's cool, right? It's an interesting little concept there. So it's not the end of the world if they don't explain it, and if they choose to, pretty easily understood. But I am very excited about the fact that Abomination looks so much like his comic book counterpart, because to be honest, Abomination always looked cool. And can I be the the one out here, and I feel like I'm not the only one, but I want to be the one out here to say, I am so excited about the fight between Wong and Abomination. Oh my God, dude, that fight is gonna be amazing. Because we've never really seen Wong go ham in like the MCU, right? It's like Jenna Marbles once said, not only is ham delicious, you can go it. And I wanna see Wong go ham in the MCU, man. I wanna see that happen. Wong and Abomination in a cage, it's like a pay-per-view thing, right? Like tomorrow night on pay-per-view, Wong versus Abomination, which one wins? Obviously Wong is gonna win, but it looks cool, right? I'm really excited to see this fight between these two guys. But continuing on, it was revealed that the director for Thor 4 has really come out and said that a component for the Thor 4 film, and seemingly a big component, is gonna be a love story. Now, it's not gonna be the biggest focus, and in fact, I doubt you're probably gonna see a love story between Jane Foster and Thor. Maybe you will, but if I'm being honest with you guys, and I've kind of always wanted to see this, a love story between Thor and Valkyrie. And it seems like it wouldn't work, right? But I kind of wanna see like Thor and Tessa Thompson get together and just kind of be a couple. Like, I feel like it would be really, really awesome. I don't know why I keep saying Thor. Chris Hemsworth and Tessa Thompson. It's not like Chris Hemsworth is Thor, or is he? But regardless, I really want to see the romance between the two of them. If I'm being honest with you guys, I feel like a really good way to make this work is if, because Thor comes out next year and then Guardians 3 comes out the year after. Something that I think would be really cool to make this work is you kind of build up the romance between like Thor and Tessa Thompson. So like midway through the film or 3/4 of the way through the film, they like kiss and then like officially become a couple. And then at the end of the film, it's like maybe a post-credit scene or something like that. She gets snatched up by Adam Warlock. And then Adam Warlock is the main villain for Guardians 3, because we know that Thor and the Guardians are gonna be together in Thor 4. So it would make sense if they're basically two halves of the same movie, like Infinity War and Avengers Endgame. And here's the reason why I say that. For those of you guys who are unfamiliar with Adam Warlock in Marvel Comics, Adam Warlock was originally called him, and he was created by a group called the Enclave, basically a group that wanted to conquer the world through technological means. But they created Adam Warlock to be the perfect human. A whole bunch of stuff happened, Fantastic Four was involved, Adam Warlock ultimately escaped. One of the things that he did is he longed for a companion. So he basically ended up kidnapping Sif, who at the time was the girlfriend of Thor, and then him and Thor got into a great big huge fight. And then ultimately the day was saved and everything was kind of cool, and then Adam Warlock went back to do his own thing. But I feel like that'd be a cool component to put into the MCU, that instead of having Sif, that what you basically have is Tessa Thompson Valkyrie, that Adam Warlock shows up on the scene, snatches up Tessa Thompson, and it's like, oh my God, it's like when Bowser steals Princess Peach and Mario's gotta go save her. That like Thor grabs the Guardians and says, okay, that's our next mission, to be continued in Guardians 3, and they race off to save Valkyrie from Adam Warlock. And then you got your main villain already baked in for the first, or really for Guardians of the Galaxy 3. I feel like that would be cool, right? I mean, I don't know if that would definitively be the case. I feel like we're not gonna see Adam Warlock in Thor 4. We already know that. We know that he's supposed to debut in Guardians 3, so I feel like it kind of works. And trying to tie that plot into Thor 4, even if you do that in the third act, it's just a little too much for a singular movie, right? You guys get what I mean? So I feel like kind of starting that plot thread at the very end of Thor 4 and continuing it in Guardians of the Galaxy 3 would work pretty well. But let me know what you guys think down in the comments section, right? If you guys think that'd be cool, or if you think it's a little too much and a little too far-fetched. But continuing on, Daniel Espinosa, in a recent interview, Daniel Espinosa, of course, being the director for the Mobius film, had basically revealed this idea of being involved with Morbius and the possibilities of what the MCU may do, and it talked about how when he was on the set walking around, he was running over the names of people who had been on the set. One of those names was Tom Hardy. Now, the significance of that, we don't fully know, but the fact that Tom Hardy is playing Venom and the fact that Tom Hardy was on the set of the Morbius film is interesting. It begs a few questions, right? Was Tom Hardy there as kind of an advisor? Is Tom Hardy just a really good friend of somebody like Jared Leto and he was just kind of hanging out watching him act? Honestly, I think it's because Tom Hardy is going to have a role in Morbius, and that makes perfect sense. We've known for a long, long time that Marvel's building up to the Midnight Suns. We've known that for quite some time, and while the traditional roster of the Midnight Suns may or may not be seen in the Marvel Cinematic Universe, in the case of Michael Morbius and like Ghost Rider and Werewolf by Night, that if they do decide to shift up a couple characters and throw Venom onto the team, that it would work, because Venom was originally a pretty pretty dark character, so he fit in really well with the Midnight Suns, that kind of darker element. The one thing that Venom lacks that's not really part of the traditional Midnight Suns mythos is the kind of dark horror side of Marvel Comics, which is really where the Midnight Suns largely originated from. They were largely based on the concept of like monsters from Hollywood. So like you had Mummy, you had Frankenstein, you had the werewolf, different things like that. Marvel Comics very much copied that with the Midnight Suns. Michael Morbius as a vampire, Werewolf by Night as a werewolf, like these different kinds of characters that you saw in Marvel Comics, it just kind of represented the traditional horror side that had long since been a part of Hollywood. And so even if Venom kind of lacks that to a degree, the movies as they've been made by Sony, or at least the first one and presumably the second one, have been pretty dark. So sure, he doesn't really represent any kind of horror aspect of traditional Hollywood or even just writing in general, right? Just traditional literature. But regardless, he would still fit in pretty well with the Midnight Suns. So I love the idea that even if he's not necessarily having a role in the movie, that if Marvel's like, hey, we're doing the Midnight Suns, so, you know, Tom Hardy, Sony, you guys go over there, keep an eye on what's going on, because whatever it is that happens to Michael Morbius is going to affect the future of Venom with regards to the movies he's making as a part of the Sonyverse and their crossover with the MCU. So, you know, we're gonna need you to be abreast of what's going on. I love that idea, right? I love that kind of coming together and crossing over. But for our final topic here, on to Hugh Jackman. Now, what Hugh Jackman had to say was massive. There was a recent interview that Hugh Jackman did where he was talking about the idea of playing Wolverine in the MCU. Now, yes, Hugh Jackman shot down the idea, but not in the way that you think. Historically, whenever Hugh Jackman was asked the question, are you gonna play Wolverine in the MCU? When's the time coming when you're gonna play Wolverine in the MCU? It's always, well, no, that's not really gonna happen. You know, that's not really my thing. I'm done with the character of Wolverine. Nope, this was totally different. So in this interview, he had basically said a couple different things. The first, and probably the less significant here, is that when he was playing Logan, he just kind of had this feeling, that's it, right? This is when he's done playing the character of Wolverine, because the movie had a kind of finality to it, right? Not necessarily even just for Wolverine, but for the Fox X-Men universe as a whole, right? This is when it's all basically done. We did get that terrible X-Men Dark Phoenix movie, but honestly, no one remembers it because it sucked. So don't worry if you don't remember that it exists, or if you didn't know it exists. If you haven't seen it, you're probably doing yourself a massive favor there. But at the end of the day, like Hugh Jackman kind of said, this is it, right? It has a finality to it. It's done. In the same way that like Avengers Endgame almost kind of had a finality to the MCU. That if Feige and all them said, okay, now we're done making Marvel movies, it would have just felt right. It would have been disappointing, but it would have felt right. It wouldn't have felt like it was cut off prematurely. It would have been like, yeah, I could see this is a good place to end it. Seems like a good place to stop, right? It would make sense. The other thing he said here, and this is the more significant thing, is he did not say, I don't want to play Wolverine in the MCU. I'm done playing the character of Wolverine. I've had enough of it. What he said is, I haven't gotten anything from Kevin Feige yet. And so until that happens, there's no reason to believe that I'm not playing Wolverine in the MCU. What does this mean? That's a wholly different statement from saying, I don't want to play the character. It's just, I haven't been invited to yet. All of that reeks of the fact that Hugh Jackman's interested in returning as Wolverine in the MCU. He just hasn't heard anything back from Kevin Feige that confirms that he's gonna play Wolverine in the MCU. Let me tell you guys something, man. As excited as the internet is about like the Spider-Man No Way Home trailer, let the trailer for the X-Men drop. Let the trailer for the X-Men come out, and like at the very end, right, you get like, you know, the crazy action sequences and all that kind of stuff, and you guys know how it goes. The screen goes black, and then you get like this 5-second moment, and then like it's the end thing, right, like coming out at such and such or whatever, and like that 5-second moment is just like some claws pop, and then you see Hugh Jackman's face, and then it's cut to black. Let me tell you something, man, the internet would
flopping
explode if that happened, dude. It would go nuts. I can tell you right now, man, I would freak. I'd probably destroy my own set in excitement. Yes, I know it doesn't make any rational sense. We're human beings. We're naturally irrational. I would freak. You guys would never ever see me lose my mind as much as you would see me lose it if we saw Hugh Jackman, if we had a trailer and Hugh Jackman appeared in the trailer for the X-Men in the MCU, and it's like, yeah, he's back as Wolverine. Dude, I would freak. I wanna know, how would you guys react? How would you guys respond if you saw the trailer for the X-Men in the MCU and then it was revealed in that trailer that Hugh Jackman's returning at Wolverine? What would you do, right? How would you react? I really, really need to know that. I'm gonna be going through all your comments because I'm really hoping I would see people who would just be like, in all caps, I would freak. I really hope you guys type that in the comments. I would freak. I really hope you guys do. But regardless, like, I'd be super excited. But with that being said, guys, that's our episode of the Rumor Roundup for this week. Thank you guys for tuning in. Let us know in the comments if there was any news that you feel like we missed, and we will catch you all later. Peace.